Hi, everybody. Radical Gardener. Well, where should I be looking? With this new phone, I'm not quite sure. That doesn't look right, so I think, is it there? We'll figure it out. Okay, so today is the last day of June, I think, and tomorrow's July 1st, and it's a Tuesday. There's a lot of crap going on, isn't there? Which brings me to what I want to talk about today, and it's about how many people have lost their ability to discern what's true, to actually think, critical thinking, as opposed to just regurgitating what other people say. And I mean, I'm not the smartest kid on the block, but most things I don't believe right out of the gate. I'm suspicious in most cases that the place I start is that it probably isn't true. Now, I was blessed because I was raised with a mother and a father who didn't believe most things. They were real clear thinkers. And I think parents that were born in the 20s and 30s, they seem to have have a natural intellect, or maybe it was due to their life experience, like life wasn't very easy. They were on the tail end of the Depression. So you had to be really clever about how you got through the day, how you were going to eat, how you were going to cook, where you were going to live. I mean, there was a lot of problem solving that you had to that really fed into surviving, right? And when you get into the era that we're in now, things are, in most cases, things are given to you. You have easy access. How we have the internet, just look it up, even though, most of it's crap and it's not true, or it's half truths. We've gotten lazy in our thinking and in our, just our ability to think, right? And it isn't just because of how society, or not society, but how accessible information is. And like I said, a lot of it's wrong information. But it has to do with how we were schooled in academia. And I can remember in high school, I actually had a couple of teachers that are really good. And I was in a really good district. I was in Dearborn, Michigan. And the reason that the school system was so good and we had such good teachers, they were paid really well, but because of Ford Motor Company, and Ford Motor Company was based in Dearborn, and so they really subsidized the educational budget. So we had everything. At that time there weren't computers, but like there was office machines and all these different things. And so if you're going to go out into the work world, you'd already had training on 10 different kinds of office machines that you're going to run into if you went and worked as a secretary, what have you. And they also had great programs where you worked half the day and you went to school half the day. And I think that you could start, once you had enough credits, you could start that in like 11th grade, which I did. And so I was out in the workplace, which again, when you get out into the real world, then, things aren't being handed to you. You have to problem solve, and, how am I going to get there? How do I get a car? I got to get a driver's license. How am I going to afford that? My mother was on disability. There was no money. So I had to be really creative about everything, right? So, all of those things feed into, an ability to really think and to discern. And like I said, I remember I had a couple of teachers and they were terrific, and, the other ones were just phoning it in. But then when I went over to college, and I went to junior college because it was free for those of us that lived in Dearborn. I went to Henry Ford Community College, and that became nightmarish for me because I didn't believe anything that the teachers were telling me. And I was right. There was a lot of BS. And I remember I took Psych 101, and I took class because I didn't know what else to take. I didn't really want to go to college, but I went, and actually I lasted a semester, and it was so not my cup of tea that I left, and actually I auditioned to get in a band, and that's really what set my my was my destined path, was to be in bands and just to pursue the arts, and that's really what I'm here to do. But I wasn't quite sure about it then. But I remember sitting in a psych class and him talking about how mothers are conditioned to love their children, and it's because of their of how society operate, blah blah. And I knew that wasn't true. I knew that there was not just a spiritual bond, between a mother and a child, but there is actually a secretion in the body which actually connects the mother physically to the child, and so and it really feeds into her emotional connection to the child. So I did mass research on that, and because I didn't believe him. And so I presented in some argument, and his response to me was, "Well, this is your first year in college, right? So that's why you don't understand what I'm talking about." And my point being is that I was not encouraged to think. I was encouraged to listen and to believe. And a lot of these clowns that are in academia now, and then we're finding out just how warped academia has really become, and maybe it always was, is that we are trained to just believe and to be good little students and to be orderly and not to debate. And a lot of these professors teach out of their own books. Okay. We might want to discuss other points of view, but maybe not. So, that was just kind of the beginning of it for me. So why don't I believe what I'm told? Because most of it doesn't make any sense. To me, it's just common sense. Okay, let's take COVID. I mean, I'm so sick about COVID and talking about COVID, but it's a good example. When we take COVID and, we're told, don't wear a mask, it's fine, everything. Then all of a sudden, wear a mask, and we know, well, wearing a mask, that isn't going to work. This is, if that's like a bacteria or virus, it's small, it's going to get in somehow and, whatever. And gee, it's summertime and, this virus isn't supposed to live, so-called virus isn't supposed to live in the heat, and what we're closing down Texas and Florida, and it's like, it's 95 degrees here and the humidity is 109. Hell, anything that isn't a virus can barely live in this heat. It just goes on and on and on. But there's people that will just believe it. And that is so frustrating, and you end up kind of becoming a little bit of a recluse, or I do, because I want to exchange ideas. I want to talk about real things. I want to talk about, and I've mentioned this before, a mechanistic point of view versus a vitalistic point of view. How do we combine a mechanistic world with a belief system with a vitalistic belief system, or vitalistic belief system. How do we combine those two, and how do we live in the middle of that, right? And how can science move into that? How can we be, smarter about things? How much more efficient can we become in our lives? They're never going to be easy solutions, and they're not going to be typical solutions. It's going to be from us constantly questioning whatever the narrative is, and we're might have to ask really big questions for a really, 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 really long time before we get to any satisfying answers, right? I remember a long time ago when I realized that there aren't ever, let me kind of back this up. When I say answers, I mean that sorta, because I don't know if there's ever any true real answers, because there's always a bigger picture. So if you are, think you have the answer, then the question has not been big enough, right? However big we think the picture is, it's bigger, right? So when we're talking about environment, well, we have to include everything. We have to include the cosmos. Why are we leaving that out? We have to talk about planetary alignments and how the planets affect each other. And we have these incredible guideposts that have been given to us along the way, and for things like that is Steiner, And even Steiner talks about in his book, a lot of his books, but he talks about how the mechanistic world, the doctors, the scientists, have such a hard time really understanding how life really works because they can't embrace the vitalistic world. But then, you get someone like, like Rupert Sheldrake, and he's a genius. He can do that. He can combine those things. He can set experiments, simple experiments that prove that these two lines of thinking can live, that do live side by side. But anyway, so what is my point here? It makes it really difficult for me to be social. And I'm on social media, and you find some like-minded people, and you'll find some brilliant ones. I mean, a couple that I really think are just absolutely brilliant, and they really keep me going. And here's the thing that's scary: is I am not the smartest one in the pack. I mean, come on, my husband's brilliant, and of course, my husband, he barely talks to anybody because most people would not get what Joe was talking about. Joe is, he is the guy that can straddle these two worlds. And it doesn't do small talk at all. I mean, I don't like it, but he doesn't do it at all. I remember he was telling me, and maybe I've told you the story, but I remember he was telling me that, he was working at the University of Washington in the research department. He was looking to get into brain surgery, and one of the things they were working with is epilepsy and different, malfunctions of the brain, and so he was working with people that went on to win Nobel Prizes, and so anyways, there was a guy that he worked with who was, one of the scientists, instructors there, and he was just vile to everybody, and Joe really liked him, and Joe said he was just this totally honest guy, and he just wasn't fake at all, and and everybody's always kissing everybody else's ass in academia because they want the money, they want the grant money, and that's why they're always, those professors, they're just, man, if you think the music world is doggy dog, get into academia. I mean, they'll cut your throat, get their name on some paper that gets published. So anyways, Joe asked this guy, he says, why are you so cranky? Why are you so mean to these people? And the guy says, he said, I just don't have that many brain cells left. And he says, every day I lose more brain cells. And he says, I am not going to waste the ones that I have on these idiots. I kind of agree. So, the few times I've joined a club, I remember I joined this gardening club on Harson's Island. You want to talk about sticking out like a sore thumb. Oh my God. I had no idea what, I just didn't, it was so, I just didn't belong there. Well, we never really talked about gardening, which is why I was there, but I realized I can't even do small talk for 5 minutes. I'm really bad at. I want to talk about real stuff, right? So, and it's just coming up because, I'm in a new community and I would, love to connect with, people. But the minute I think about, oh God, I'm sitting in a room full of people and, geez, I'm going to, half of them are going to have masks on. It's just, I can't, I don't know if I can bear it. And, uh, you know, it's difficult. It's difficult because I want to be engaged. I want to talk ideas, and it doesn't mean we have to agree. I mean, maybe it's better that we don't. I had a friend in Seattle, John Boucher, and he was a physicist and a math teacher, and he was just read all the time, and I read all the time, and my husband reads all the time, and so we would, we'd always have these kind of debates and exchange of ideas, and he was sure that he was right, and I was sure I was right, but it was all in good fun, and when you walked out, you felt smarter, right? Another example, I was reading the Steiner book, and I should grab it's right here. And one of the debates that I always have with people, the book is Secret Brotherhoods and the Mystery of the Human Double. I've talked about this book a couple of times. This book gives me a real run for my money as far as comprehending what he's talking about. And what I love about his writing is that it's difficult to understand on purpose. And people say, well, it's difficult. He writes in a real weird way. He does. And I believe he writes in a way where it is more of a subconscious understanding than a conscious understanding. It's almost a circular way of writing. And I don't even know what I mean by that, except it's almost like his writing is kind of it's almost like he's writing in spirals, right? I keep getting these texts, that he's writing in spirals, like in this spiral motion, because like he keeps coming around to something he said prior, but he's saying it differently. So anyways, this book is mind-blowing because you would think he wrote it yesterday. And he wrote it at, when did he write it? I will tell you when he wrote it. A long time ago. Let's see. That's when this translation, 2004 this is published, but when did he write the damn thing? 1917. What was interesting is he wrote this, that's the pandemic. That was after a real pandemic, by the way, the Spanish flu, which did kill millions and millions and millions, and then disappeared because we got an immune system, it's the same. And after the Great War, the First World War, a lot of people died. And he talks about that's when things really began to shift and go dark. And it has to do with all the blood that was spilled. And that's where this whole kind of satanic movement came out of. It's pretty freaking interesting. But I've always argued, moving to a little of a different subject, that there's such a thing as destiny. And I put up a pretty good debate on that. It's pretty hard to prove me wrong. And so, people like to go to all the free choice stuff and everything. And, my thinking is that this is such a well-orchestrated reality or life or cosmos is so orchestrated. It works like a finely tuned watch. And I believe that when we're in spirit, before we enter our bodies, there's a co-creative agreement about what's needed. And along with that comes in the culmination of what we were and how we lived before, and what is needed as we go into our new bodies, our new existence, right? Our new third dimensional reality. So it's this kind of culmination of knowledge that is agreed upon. And you're going to hear thunder. I'm so glad, because if it's watering my garden, I don't have to water my garden, and the garden loves rain way more than it loves water out of the tap. So I came across this in the Steiner book. This is so good. And here I'm proving my point. This is a thinker. This is not a regurgitator. Don't tell me things because you heard somebody else say it. Send it through your thinking process. Send it through your own discernment. Does it make any sense? Compare it to other things that you know or suspect may be true. All right, so he says here, you realize that ordinary consciousness merely dreams its way through destiny without understanding it, just as one accepts dreams. Spiritual consciousness, in which we wake up, as we wake up from dreams into ordinary consciousness, gains us a new relationship to destiny. We recognize destiny as that which works with us on our overall life, the life that proceeds on and on through births and deaths. This must not be understood in a superficial way by simply saying that one has brought one's misfortune on oneself. So forget the karma crap. Forget the karma. You're not being punished for a past life. Forget the karma. To do this would be to misunderstand spiritual research. Indeed, it would be to cast slanderous aspersions on it. And anyway, a misfortune need not necessarily have its cause in one's former life. It may have happened spontaneously, in which case there would be consequences in the next life and in the whole of the life between the two lives on earth. For it is often to be seen that from misfortune and also suffering and pain, there grows a different kind of consciousness in the spiritual world. What happens through this new spiritual knowledge is that meaning enters our whole life, understanding for our destiny, which we normally dream our way through, but which we now come to comprehend. I'm telling you, I could read those 3 paragraphs over and over again, and each time I would read them, I would understand a little bit more. So, Florida, I love the thunderstorms down here. They are so cool. And the garden just loves them, Anyway, so that's just an example of, wow, I always hear about karma. Is that even true? Is that just some BS that, I've just picked up and I just repeat it because somebody repeated it before me? You know what I mean? We have to be really careful. We have to be really careful about what we think is true. Let's think about things a little more. Let's read. Let's challenge ourselves. We need it. We are in a new timeline. We need to bring some really smart stuff with us, right? And that will give us a sense of real place in this new timeline if we are engaged in our intellect and in our soul, a combination of the two, right? We don't want one without the other. That's it. Thanks. So, Radical Gardener, from my garden to yours, may your garden always grow. I'm sending you a ton of love. And thank you so much for allowing me to really have this channel be so many different things. I always just wanted to be kind of an extension of my life. And, I was on stage for years and I got to share my experiences through my art. And so it's nice to be able to do this. This is something I really enjoy, so I do appreciate it. Okay, everybody. Love you lots, and I'm back in the garden soon, okay? Oh, and now I'm on Parlor. All of my links are below, but my world is expanding. Okay, thanks so much. All right, bye.